This is the Commercial Landscapers Podcast, hosted by Dave Anderson and Robert Klinkenbeard. This show will absolutely transform your leadership by developing all aspects of your life in business, family, personal and health. Only by fine-tuning yourself will you truly operate as a highly functioning leader. Zech Strauser, really happy that you could join us today on the Commercial Landscapers Podcast. Really excited. I've known you now for probably a couple of years and just been really inspired with what you're doing with your company and all the different creative parts to what you do. So thank you for joining me today.
Likewise. Thanks a lot, Robert. Appreciate it.
So give me a quick elevator pitch on who you are and how you got into the business.
So Zech Strauser, I am the founder, owner of a landscape company called Strauser Nature's Helpers. We are located in Eastern Pennsylvania. The beautiful Poconos is where we started, and it's a kind of a vacationer resort community. But south and southwest of us, we've also kind of grown into, and it's more of an industrious growing areas, Lehigh Valley and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So they're kind of growing areas that our business is also growing into. So, how I started in landscaping, I guess if you really went far, far back, it'd be that my parents were avid gardeners and kind of, we'll call it very non-traditional in the sense that we lived out in the woods, and my parents down to the level of we kept our food in a creek. We had no running water or electricity. Wow. And that was in Pennsylvania for my probably 4 years old to about 8 years old. That's kind of how we lived. And a small farm before that we lived on. So fast forward, we moved to a town called Delaware Water Gap in the Poconos. And they started a bed and breakfast and restaurant. Again, we'll call it very organic, based off vegetarian diets, and there were yoga retreats at our bed and breakfast. And so I think when we started merging into that restaurant and bed and breakfast, I grew up as a homeschooled student. So my parents taught me at home, and I was always helping with dinners, serving the guests, I guess free labor for my parents. but I think when I go to that point, now I'm 10, 12, 13 years old, and it really taught me, I think, service and, tending to guests and that side of things. So again, the whole time, always kind of revolved around gardening. Got into skiing, moved to Vermont, became I guess, semi-professional skier in the sense of coaching. Okay. I never competed. I was just a coach to competitors, actually. So it's kind of funny. I became a coach of people competing, and I never competed myself. Right. But again, always outdoors, mountain biking, skiing. But I had an awesome boss in Vermont, and his name was Stevik. And he really set in, obviously a lot of other people, my parents taught me business stuff because my dad always had businesses and so forth, but something clicked with this guy and me at the age of 18, 19, and he instilled in me in getting a trade and sticking to that trade. Trades are always going to be there. He was a very successful business person in Manhattan. He was the top New York Life salesman in Manhattan for life insurance. And so he knew business very well. And so he kind of coached me up. How much money do you have in the bank? How much money did you save? How much? It was constant.
Did that help you?
Do you have now? Yeah, it was constant. So he basically was, in the very beginning, my mentor on make money, save money, make money, save money, and trades, and showing me the value and where that could lead. So fast forward, and he was so good with money. If I told him I had eight, and he knew thousands of people. When he had since passed away, he unfortunately got hit by a car in Manhattan, and he had passed away. And when he did, just to give you an idea of this person's impact, he filled the Carnegie Hall up in Manhattan.
Wow, you obviously had a huge impact on people.
And had hundreds, if not thousands of people standing down the streets trying to get in.
Right.
So it gives you a perspective. He knew so many people and very prominent people in the business world. And he would know my numbers in my bank account by heart.
Even though you're just dealing with the hundreds of people.
Yeah, I'm just a kid that coaches skiing for him in Stratton, because he ran this ski program at Stratton, Vermont on the weekends. That was his kind of hobby. And there was hundreds of kids in the program, and we probably had about 40 coaches or 30 coaches. So this is just as fun. It's like being a soccer coach, but knowing every single kid on your soccer team, like knowing all their bank account and knowing it by heart.
That's great.
So go ahead. Sorry.
No, and I'm going to come back to you about a question about that. I mean, do you feel, I mean, when I hear from you about, and really being passionate about being outdoors, you obviously learned the value of the service industry, just, looking after your clients, your customers. Do you think that sort of drew you in towards the landscape industry?
Well, it's definitely a really good, it's really a good fit. And, I can never say like what exactly. It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, I'm going to be a great landscaper or leader of a company or anything. I think it was, service. And even like when I go back to ski coaching, I mean, that's service. I worked for I was coaching some of the most affluent people in the country, basically out of Westchester and Connecticut, and they would all come up and I was coaching their kids. So I knew service at that level. Right. To serve whoever you're working for. So between service and the outdoors, and then being brought up with a strong kind of, parental figures in gardening, all that combination, I guess, just drew me to really some of my first jobs in the green industry were golf courses. Right. And golf courses can be as long as you don't stay in them too long, it can be a great place to learn attention for detail. Right. So golf courses really taught me that too. And that's where I bought my first push mower from a golf course. Okay. For $25. And that's how I started.
How about you've talked about, your mentor there. You've talked about your influence from your parents. How can you explain that, the importance of just having good either mentors or people around you just to help push you in your business?
So we'll just say external influence is probably one of the most empowering things that I've had the ability to leverage, whether it's industry experts that can help that, are some of the founders of the new modern day landscape industry or peer-to-peer, and then obviously other external people like John Maxwell. And there's just so much. I always say this, some of the best things about the landscape profession is that I don't know how many other industries are as giving for peer-to-peer and helping coach and mentor other landscapers or people. So I think I've had a huge, I give probably, if I broke up success factors, let's just say into thirds, a third would be because of influence of coaches and consultants and peer-to-peer. The other third would be probably my drive. And then the other third is the team that I've built over the last 20 years and probably more predominantly over the last 3 to 4 years, really.
Right. That's great. It's important to have some good people around you. I mean, being a good leader is, obviously part of it, but having a good team that eventually can take over some of those responsibilities is really key.
And that's the position I'm kind of in, as we were talking about before. I mean, that's one of the kind of the transitions I'm in my life and business,
Well, talking about transitions, you recently became a new father to a wonderful baby girl, I believe.
Yep, baby girl. Her name is Briar.
Yeah, I've been seeing some of the pictures online on your Facebook, and you just look really happy when you're around her. Tell me how that's changed your your views of, the community, of the people around you, what your future looks like?
Well, it's funny you say that. I look at, and then when you said that, I noticed that I was smiling ear to ear, and business doesn't make us all really smile, right? It's kind of like we're all serious about it, but
yeah.
So it's actually, it sounds a little mushy, but it is actually taught me the importance of, it's such a big kind of macro statement, but life, like, I think before having a kid at 43, I kind of started getting into the mode of, well, maybe we're getting too old. Maybe you're not going to have a kid. I don't know.
Right.
And we just kind of got in that mindset, I guess, that maybe we won't, maybe we're too old. And a year ago, my wife kind of said that it was important. So we started, trying, and we did, and it's all fast forward, and it's just absolutely that statement that everyone says your life is never really started, or it's not complete, or you don't know what life is until you have a kid. I always did not understand those statements
until it happened.
I'd be like, yeah, I understand. I have employees. I get it. Whatever. I have a dog, whatever. There's just nothing in comparison. And our life is really, work has never been more important, and work has never been not as important. So it's kind of like this, there's just a whole new meaning that we're experiencing day by day.
No, I'm excited for you. Super excited for you. Good to see you smiling.
Yeah, and introducing her to, like, trying to make sure that I don't think we plan on living with no running water or electricity anytime soon. But
she might not appreciate that.
Yeah. How do I bring her into that level of simplicity in today's world, I guess, is what I'm looking to do.
Well, actually, it brings up a good point that, I believe you've made a big shift towards more of an organic platform. That's obviously a big importance to you. How does that help with either your business, your brand, your messaging out there?
I think it's funny. I just got off a negotiation call, and one of the negotiation factors is trying to get a client to upgrade to organics and top dressing to try to break down some of their clay soils. So we're working on it every day. That's what I say. And I believe the commercial landscape world is one of the slowest places to move so far in those arenas. And I think that it's a very infinite game. If anyone just read Simon Sinek's book, Infinite Game, it's a real, like, when I read that book and I kind of try to tie it to our landscape industry or company, I say, well, that's one of the bigger things in our industry that I think is more the infinite game that we all have to kind of rally around and say it's not going to be something that we're going to try to achieve in the next year or two or 5 or 10 even. This is a beginning of the new era of landscaping between technology and chemical decrease. And I think that we're not making, by the numbers, by the transformations of taking someone from X to Y, it's just not moving fast. But it is, I think, one of the underlying main objectives of the company is to try to keep making impact in those areas. And I think it's just constant conversation, constantly giving them A, B choices and explaining to them what those are and what are the benefits. I just think it's a slow moving, maybe it's my market, but I think overall it's just it's super near and dear to my heart to know that our industry is not as green as we think we are. And I really think we, between salts, and it's not just the pesticides and we, synthetic fertilizers, it's a lot of other stuff that we're super wasteful in. And how do you transform a sector of the industry into this newer direction? I think it's just a day by day practice. So
No, I see the same thing. I mean, I don't believe it's just your market. I think it's definitely a slow moving trend. I mean, I did see an uptake probably 4 or 5 years ago when they were all, lead buildings and changing stuff. But I think that's definitely, I don't know if it's just we've got too busy, people are just too frantic. So, but I'm a big believer on,
I think
moving towards that organic.
I agree on the busyness side, and I think the thing that's going on, that there is a lot of things moving, and a lot of it's through legislation and just people coming to these studies starting to come out that are just starting to, like, there's a lot of studies being formed on salt usage, and I don't want to quote for exact because I may be wrong on one level, but there's some numbers out there that talk something about, in the 50-year period, if we continue to use salt the way we do, we will not have drinking water. So
That's frightening.
Yeah, there's a lot of what's the answer. There's some people that have some ideas, but there's a lot of kind of big hot topics that aren't around the corner next year, but they're, getting close to starting to be implemented and start to put some restrictions. So I think it's how does our industry stop lobbying and trying to fight what we're currently doing, but change,
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to start focusing on versus put our efforts in to continue to do the same thing. Let's put our efforts into how we, I'm not saying people aren't doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm leading it by any means, but I want to be part of the conversation, I guess.
No, that makes sense. And talking about leading, you won the Lawn and Landscapes Emerging Leader Award 2 years ago, so congratulations for that. So you are making an impact in the industry. People are recognizing what you stand for, what you're doing, your involvement. So I really, appreciate you doing that. For the up and coming, the emerging leaders, the new people trying to get into the business, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them?
It's funny you say that because I follow a lot of smaller, but very influenceable, if that's a word, companies on Instagram and TikTok and all the platforms of young, aggressive. This is something I did notice that I connected with this kid and I said, hey, and I call him a kid because he's 20 years old. I said hashtag strong cone game. Like his cones around his truck were really well positioned. And
right.
There's one thing I do on social media. I'm always giving the younger generation better safety tips.
Okay.
Because they generally take their weed whacker guards off. Right. A little, we'll call it cowboyish, right? So it's like, hey guys, like awesome hustle, but let's focus on safety. And the one girl the other day I called out, I said, hey, awesome hustle, put on your safety glasses. And she goes, they are, look harder. And I zoomed in and I go, oh, I'm sorry, they were clear. So,
okay.
But it's cool to get that interaction. And what's funny is we're talking about the younger generation. And just 5 years ago, I felt like I was that, but I'm starting to go to the other side, we'll call it. And when this one kid goes, hey, can we grab a phone call? The kid, I said, strong cone game. And I said, yeah, no problem. We ended up talking for an hour and a half on a Saturday morning. And he's down in Virginia. And he said, well, I'm $1 million in 16 months. And he's like 19.
Wow.
He's
got impressive
4 or 5 trucks and it's all professional. Wow. And I'm like, and you started, and he tells me the story and he tells me what revenues he's going to be. He's like, yeah, I'm putting a plan. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to become like, 40 or 50 million. Wow. And it struck me. I told my wife, I said, I can't even imagine when I was 19. I mean, when I was 19, I was my buddy that had a Z rider. I thought he was God. I was like, this guy's incredible. He's got a Z rider. So I think if I'm giving them advice, it's patience, because I'm like, okay, That could be possible. You could be, but I don't. It's probably going to still take you. Like, it's the difference that he wants to become 40 million. I wanted to become 1 million. And the bottom line is, it still took me my 7 or 8 years to become 1 million.
Right.
So, teaching him the patience, talking to him about that. And I started asking him about his financial structure and how his chart of accounts were set up. He didn't really have much
Need some help there.
conversation in those areas. So that was interesting. So I think it's financials, patience, safety. And I think they get so caught up in, and I'm a huge social media supporter, but I also think there's this run and craze for small companies to make a big impact on social media. They almost don't care about how many employees they have or how much revenue they have at times. They really care about how many followers they have on showing their stripes or whatever. Right. So if you watch that, that's a very interesting segment of the industry to watch. And I'm trying to talk to him about, and it was interesting when I talked to him about the environmental side. I think they say, yeah, you're right, but they didn't really see that was an option. I think the younger you get, the more they believe that we need to make an impact environmentally, but I'm not really certain they're seeing the bigger guys that they're looking at be that.
Probably not.
I think it's important that I don't know if I'm making sense, but.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It'd be good for some of the bigger companies or more established people to, make more of an impact there. I think some of the new companies sort of look up to some of these, gurus. So
yeah, there's so many tips. There's good old fashioned save, save money for bad times, all those things. But a lot of those things, business owners will never fully learn until they go through the first recession, like I did in 2008. That was my first. I always, from like 2008 to 2011, I would tell everyone, the young punk has to grow up. Like, I had to learn what it was like to not just have money to buy trucks half cash.
Right.
From the 2000s.
So final question here. If people want to just, talk to you more about, either fatherhood or whether it be about your environmental organic platform or even just some more pieces of advice in becoming, a leader in the industry, how would they get in touch with you?
I'd say probably the best would be LinkedIn. I mean, I am on TikTok, social, Instagram, and Facebook, but I prefer to try to do the most business stuff, if we'll call it that, on LinkedIn. Although the last week and a half, I've been pretty silent. I took a stay-at-home work vacation, so nice. I have not been posting much over the last week. But LinkedIn, and also, I think LinkedIn's the best. I'll message you back the same day.
Okay, cool. Well, awesome, Zach. I really appreciate your time today. I'm sure I'm going to get you back on here because I think we've only touched on all the things that you can offer to the industry and the advice you can provide to industry professionals. But really, thank you for your time today. So
congratulations on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is the Commercial Landscapers podcast, and excited that everybody could follow us. So thank you, Zach.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert.
Good day. Okay, cheers. This was the Commercial Landscaper podcast, hosted by Dave Anderson, author of Leader is Not a Title, and Robert Clinkenbeard, author of The Ironman Mindset for Entrepreneurs. You can find more details about the show and the hosts at the radixgroupllc.com or thecommerciallandscaper.com.